In this video, I'll be revealing the 3 steps that I took in order to achieve a close to 200% weighted pull-up. Now you can implement these strategies as well, even if you're a complete beginner, to see rapid progress. Now the 3 things I'll be going through are: number 1, one of the fastest and most reliable progression systems to avoid plateaus. Number 2, a great way of managing CNS fatigue to ensure that you're progressing every single week. And third, a bit of a wonky, unconventional training method that will ensure that you improve at your weighted pull-ups, even though you're not actually training weighted pull-ups.
That just makes no fucking sense. I mean, it's just bullshit.
So stay tuned for that at the end. Now, a couple of months ago, I tried a challenge where I added 1 kilo to my pull-up every single day until I could no more. And I lasted up until day number 68 on the chin-ups at a body weight of 71 kilos. So you do the math. Now, obviously, I have a long way to go, but considering I started with bodyweight pull-ups, I've made quite a bit of progress. Now, over the last couple of years, I've tested a bunch of systems for improving your weighted pull-ups. Some of them led to fragile and fatigued elbows, whereas others led to little to no strength gains. But once I implemented a system I'll be outlining for you guys today, I experienced massive progress with my weighted pull-ups and still continue to do so. So without further ado, let's get started.
So, when you get started on your weighted pull-up journey, if you've currently never added weights to your regular pull-ups, what I would recommend is that you have a solid baseline of pull-ups. Here I would say 6 to 8 reps minimum, but ideally closer to 10 clean pull-ups. When I say clean pull-ups, I mean, slow and controlled, and you pretty much getting to your upper clavicle type chest area when you hit those pull-ups. The reason for this is quite simple. Even if you could start to load your pull-ups before getting to 10 plus reps, it's really important that we've got the technique nailed down. Once you start adding weight and stuff, we really want to make sure that the scapulars are working properly, that you depress and retract those shoulder blades before you start engaging in those pull-ups. There's no need to rush any of these moves because you'll just have struggles and problems later down the line. For example, your scapulars and shoulders will work all funky, different sort of strength and muscle recruitment from each side, and just all types of issues with that regard. So yeah, 6 to 8 reps minimum, ideally closer to 10 or even more than that. Now, if you struggle to increase your pull-up reps, consider watching this video right here. And if you haven't unlocked your first pull-up yet, don't worry, because I've got a video for that as well, somewhere on the screen right now. Now, for the first point, one of the fastest and most reliable ways to build strength and progress with the weighted pull-ups is to use what's called the Russian method. So with this method, what you want to do is that whilst maintaining good form, you want to increase the number of sets you do of a particular exercise up until a point where you can add another repetition. And you do this, you increase the sets and reps, you keep switching between these and gradually improving in sets and reps until you get to a point where you can make a larger jump in weight. So specifically for weighted pull-ups, I like to stick to 3 to 5 sets of 3 to 5 reps. What this means is that your first session for a particular weight would be 3 sets of 3 repetitions per set. Then next session you would do 4 sets of 3 reps per set, then 5 sets of 3 reps per set. And at that point, once you can do 5 sets of 3 reps, we go on to, in the 4th session, doing 3 sets, but now 4 repetitions per set. Next session on, we'll do 4 sets of 4 reps, then 5 sets of 4 reps, and after that we go back to 3 sets, this time of 5 repetitions per set. Then up to 4 sets of 5 reps, and then 5 sets of 5 reps. And at this point, once you get to the 5x5 point, you should be able to add about 10 kilos thereabouts onto your pull-up, and then go back to 3x3. The beauty of this system, compared to something like an incremental method, where you each week pretty much add, let's say, half a kilo or 1.25 kilos or something like that, is that when you're doing pull-ups, for one, your body weight is changing, and also just generally in life, our strength is fluctuating. So when you have both of these things occurring and you're changing up the weight you're using, like your additional load on the weighted pull-up relative to what you did last week and how your strength levels were then, it becomes quite a bit of a mess. It's hard to predict, and I often find that when you do these types of systems, it's easy to add either too much weight or too little. Like, you end up having sessions where you surely perform quite darn well, but also sessions where you cannot perform at all, right? And it's hard to sort of time this. So I feel like the Russian method is probably the best system you have out there for maintaining solid gains and for having consistent progress, and for doing that in a fashion that is able to keep up or sort of counteract, I guess, the weight and strength fluctuations that will naturally occur, even if you are gaining or maintaining your weight, whatever have you. With this system as well, given that you have fewer actual jumps in weight, they're larger jumps in weight, we have fewer of them, I feel like it's easier for the body to stabilize. You get really good at a particular at a particular load, for example 20 kilos around your waist, for example, on the weighted pull-up. You get really good at that, going from 3x3 to 5x5, to get really used to that weight, and then you have a larger jump, but you get pretty darn used to that pretty quickly, and then you keep on moving like this. Now with this, there will be sessions where you feel particularly strong and you feel as though you could go up in weight. I would recommend that you absolutely don't do that. You stick to the same weight. What you could do if you feel very, very strong in a particular session is that maybe you squeeze out an extra rep or two towards the last 1 to 2 sets. But really there will be sessions where you feel stronger, that's normal, and there will be sessions where you feel a bit weaker. So sometimes maybe you won't be able to fully finish, let's say you're doing a session of 4 sets by 4 reps, maybe on the last 2 sets you won't be able to fully lock out the 4th rep. That's fine. And also when you do the bigger jumps, when you go from 5x5 to 3x3, you might notice that this is just too big of a jump. So in this case, what might be a good sort of approach would be to go up to doing a few extra sessions in between. So what you do is, rather than go from 5x5 to 3x3, after 5x5 you go to 6 sets of 5 reps per set, or even 7 sets of 5 reps each. And possibly also, or just do this instead, would be to do 3 sets of now 6 reps and then 4 sets of 6 reps. So you go a bit higher on the reps, and then that is sort of the stimulus needed to really push you into that 3x3 bracket at your new weight. So yeah, this sort of depends a bit on what type of weight you're using, and it depends on other factors, how you eat and sleep and all of these things. But it might be necessary to add on a few sessions. Conversely, other times you might feel like you're ready to even jump ahead relatively early, in which case could be done, but I'd say just ideally follow the system, because right there and then you might feel like you can save, I can save 3 weeks of training or something. But when you look at it in terms of the big picture, it's like you'll be spending roughly a month and a half at each, let's say between 1 to 2 months, but let's say 2 months per weight, and that is including some other factors I'll go over now in the next section. Then when you zoom out a bit, if you can add 10 kilos every other month, obviously you can't keep that up for a lifetime, but you'll make pretty darn significant progress if you just stick to the process, put your head down and just work through this. Alright, now for the second point, this is going to be how to manage CNS fatigue, or just more widely systemic fatigue. This is all about how to make sure you can consistently progress without having periods of massive plateaus and your performance decreasing and you're really just breaking down your body without getting any strength gains. So the way we'll approach this is looking at it from a micro and a macro level. On the micro level, this will be what you do on the day-to-day and week to week. So here I would really recommend the biggest thing you can do in order to maintain your performance, to keep pushing, it would be to prioritize good sleep. Also, good nutrition. But sleep is often the one that is the most underrated. If you sleep adequately, you'll be way stronger than if you don't. And I've noticed this myself over the years. If I've got periods of time, it's weeks on end from skipping the shut eye and just doing a couple of hours short here or there, I really notice in my strength performance. I notice I struggle to keep the same rep counts or set counts, or have the same load when I do weighted pull-up training as I would otherwise. So it's an absolute crucial factor to keep in mind. Second point, this would be long term, so more on a macro scale. And what you want to do for this is that I like to say approximately every 4 to 8 weeks you do a deload or a rest week. So how do we look at this specifically? The way I think about it, every 4 to 8 weeks, it's a relatively big gap there. So it depends on how you eat, how you sleep, and how you train, and sort of how your energy levels are, right? The way I like to think about it is that if you have poor sleep, you have poor nutrition, and you are training very intensely or in such a manner where, or maybe even independently of your training, you're just generally very fatigued. Maybe you're also very stressed and you're overworked, all of these types of things. If these factors coincide, I would take a deload as often as every 4 weeks. Whereas if your nutrition's on point, if you sleep really well, and you train intensely but you're not really fatigued outside of your training and in your general day-to-day life, then you can do a deload as rarely as every 8, perhaps even every 12 weeks for some machines out there. Obviously this also depends on your age and other things. So if you're a younger guy, you might even get away with every 10, 11 weeks if you eat really clean, if you sleep, let's say 8.5 hours a night, right? And given that is how much you need, and that you train intensely but that your energy levels outside of the gym are really good, and you notice that the body's just up and going, you can keep pushing through. Brilliant. Now what you could alternatively do, as opposed to specifically doing a 4 to 8 week type of thing, is that you can just judge it a bit yourself based on your performance. A couple of things to look out for when you want to gauge this yourself is energy levels in and out of the gym and plateaus. So if you're noticing that you're starting to plateau for a particular weight, if you're noticing you're feeling very tired outside of the gym and just generally energy levels are dropping, it might be time for a deload week. So pretty simple, but some important things to keep in mind right there. And also, if you notice that you haven't really gotten any of those symptoms, so to speak, even after, let's say, 8 to 9 weeks of just, pretty intense training, then I would recommend that you do a deload week just regardless. Now, when it comes to deloads, you can do either deloads or rest weeks. So this would be approximately a week in duration. Could be a bit longer, could be a bit shorter, but a week is pretty much, it's a pretty sweet spot for most people. So what you do is either a deload week where you have a lighter intensity in your training, for example just bodyweight pull-ups for a bit higher repetitions, or you could do a rest week. That means a full week without any type of training. Pros and cons to both, but it's not too crucial. This just comes down to what you feel like you need. It's nice to be in the gym and connect with your body and just like at a bit of a slower pace, like lighter intensity and more controlled reps, sort of like just check in how things are going. But during certain times there's absolutely need as well for just doing a complete detox almost from the gym, having a week where you really take things slow and you don't really train at all. Maybe you want to do some stretching, maybe you want to do some foam rolling, maybe you want to do some yoga, maybe you want to do some lighter forms of exercise, go for some walks or some light jogs or that type of thing. But yeah, there are definitely times where you'd want to stay out of the gym and do a full rest week. Also, an important thing to keep in mind is that as you're progressing with your weighted pull-ups, you might feel some strain in your elbows or wrists or whatever have you. And sometimes, sometimes that means you need to stop, but other times it might need that you're developing sort of overuse type injuries where these things can be alleviated quite quickly and be sorted by just changing the type of grip you're using. So instead of using a pronated grip, maybe go to a supinated grip, or maybe use a neutral grip, right? Changing these grip types around, it's a nice opportunity to be aware of, because that can sometimes help your training out, even when you think it might be something else, right? It might simply be overuse injury, or even an injury with just like your body noticing that you're using the same movement pattern a lot and that's starting to wear down on your body more than it's sort of being built up, right? So rather than running into a problem, change up the grip and see if that helps. If it doesn't, you either need a deload or rest week, or you need to ease up on the intensity. Now, for the third point of this video, this is an unconventional training method that I have used to improve my weighted pull-up without training weighted pull-ups, and this is one-arm pull-ups.
Now, if you're interested in achieving the one-arm pull-up, even though you're not that advanced yet when it comes to your pull training, consider checking out the top link in the description down below to the one-arm pull-up masterclass, a full course and community that will help you to achieve the one-arm pull-up in 3 to 6 months. And there's also a community aspect to this, so we gather a bunch of pulling athletes all over the world that want to improve their one-arm pull-ups and overall pulling abilities, and all of us push each other to become better every single day. If this sounds interesting to you, check the top link in the description down below and see what's up.
So even though very few people can do one-arm pull-ups, it is a possibility to do either full one-arm pull-ups or to do unilateral stimulus, so whether you're doing one-arm hangs and scapular shrugs, or whether you're doing sort of one-arm isometrics, all of these different exercises that stress your body through just one arm in a pulling scenario. These things can be quite darn beneficial for improving your weighted pull-up. Now, this is a bit of a funky one, and I know that, like if you want to, you have the said principle, at play with pretty much whatever you do in training and life, right? Like, which is specific adaptations to impose demands. If you want to be good at weighted pull-ups, the best thing to do for weighted pull-ups is to train weighted pull-ups. That's just how it is. As similarly to how the best way to get good at like a language such as Chinese is to practice Chinese and not Russian. With that said, obviously, the Russian method and making sure you deload at the proper times, those things are going to be the most important. And they also connect quite well, even though you might be at a particular sort of stage within your Russian method training and it's time for a deload, you can just fit that in there and either go straight back into training as it was, or this is an important detail I might have not mentioned earlier, is that when you go back then to your weighted pull-up program, you might want to have one session where you feel it out a bit, where you do a bit of a lighter load, a fewer reps of the load you're using, just to feel out how that is coming back after a week of no to little training. And you know, possibly a session extra, you know, 1 to 2 extra sessions, we just build it up a bit more gradually. That's also a possibility, because yeah, like those things are the most important for building up your weighted pull-ups. But who knows, I mean, for me at least, the one-arm pull-up and training for that specifically without doing any weighted pull-ups did improve my weighted pull-up. If you're interested in seeing these types of you know, my weighted pull-up results from you know, last half a year or year, consider watching these videos right here if you're interested in that. But it's an interesting thing to sort of look into, right? How training for the one-arm pull-up can help your weighted pull-up and maximal pulling strength. So let me know in the comments down below, do you think this is a viable strategy? Do you think doing one-arm pull-ups helps your weighted pull-up? What has it been like in your experience? You know, share your thoughts in the comments down below. Regardless, if you're leveling up your pulling strength and you want to take your pulling performance to the next level, you might be interested in learning how to do the one-arm pull-up. In that case, if you're more so of a beginner or you've never really done any one-arm pull-up stimulus before, consider checking the link in the description down below, because this is a full masterclass on the one-arm pull-up, how to achieve it even if you've never tried before. So consider checking that out in the description down below, or in the, you know, cards right up here. And as always, thanks for listening. Goodbye, guys.